So I, 26-year-old female, and my husband, 32-year-old male, welcomed our baby boy about a year ago. It was my first pregnancy, and honestly, it was pretty rough. The labor pain was incredibly severe. Still, I wanted a natural delivery, so I went through all of it. Due to the severe pain, I couldn't control myself and was screaming and crying. My husband, who hadn't slept the whole night, got agitated by the screaming and said to me, "Just try to suck it up a bit instead of screaming like this." I honestly cried because of his comment and the pain. The baby was born some hours later and we sort of forgot about the incident. A few days ago, my husband felt sudden pain in his stomach and it only got more severe, to the point where we had to take him to the hospital immediately. The doctor did a few checkups and told him he had a kidney stone and needed treatment. Since the pain was so severe, my husband received painkiller shots. Even during that, he was screaming at the top of his lungs. At that moment, I got petty, and since I was already fussing due to sleeplessness from taking care of a toddler, I said to my husband, "Can't you just suck it up for a while? Why are you shouting so much?" He was shocked, and then later remained quiet. When we went home, he was still quiet, and when asked, he told me how insensitive I was and he felt so bad. To this, I reminded him of the time when he said the same thing. Now he is angry and calling me petty and saying that he didn't mean anything, but I had malicious reasons. So, am I the idiot? Edit. To all the people asking if we love each other, yes, we do. It wasn't like I held on to what he said to me. However, in that moment, everything was so similar to that time that I remembered that incident, and in the spur of the moment, I said it to him. I did not ask him to leave the delivery room or make a big deal about it that time because, even though I was hurt, I understood his sentiments as well. Stress from work, sleeplessness, the overwhelming feeling of being a parent for the first time, and a constantly screaming wife can really mess with a person. I didn't want to keep him away from being a witness to his child's birth, or ruin his later moments with the baby just because of that. Was it a childish thing to say? Yes, but that does not mean we didn't fulfill our responsibilities. He took care of me and did everything a dad should, and I did everything for him likewise. No, we are not going to divorce each other for such silly banter. It's not like we always fight or act petty. If I wanted to be really petty, then I could have done a lot of other things as well, but that wasn't my intention. Yes, we have childish conversations sometimes, but they are usually funny banter. This is just one of the very few times where I wanted to come and get some insight. Little update for all of you, since many jumped to the craziest conclusions. I went to my husband and apologized. He said I don't have to, and he was not angry, just embarrassed. We talked about it and actually found it quite funny. Sure, he was acting like he was angry, but that just means he rolled his eyes at me and had an expression like, "Are you serious?" So yeah, he does not hate me, neither do I hate him. I will be preparing a nice dinner for all of us since the past few days have been exhausting, and my husband needs a good treat as well. So yeah, nothing too crazy as some of you expected. Have a good day, people. Edit 2. It wasn't really about which pain is worse. Everyone has their own experiences. To everyone who shared their experiences, I hope you all are in better health now. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Haha. I could see my wife doing exactly this sort of thing if she were in that situation, so I'll go with not the idiot. Was it a mature or kind decision? Not really, so I suppose it makes you a little mean, but hopefully he will quit wallowing in self-pity and realize that dismissing the pain of someone one claims to love is beyond callous and was wrong of him. Comment 2. Not the idiot. No man in his right mind tells a woman in labor to suck it up, and him being grumpy now is clearly a bit of what gives men their man flu, the self-centered attitude of thinking that their feelings are bigger and more important than everyone else's. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around after my last post. So, things took a turn since then. Remember how I said my husband and I had a laugh about the whole "suck it up" comment? Well, that was just the calm before the storm. A week after that, my husband's pain came back with a vengeance. We rushed back to the hospital, and it turned out the kidney stone had caused an infection. He needed surgery. And fast. The tension was thick. I could see the fear in his eyes. I felt guilty for my earlier words, and the air between us was heavy with unspoken apologies. While he was in surgery, I was left alone with my thoughts, and the weight of our recent spat felt like a boulder on my chest. I remembered how, when we first met, he'd been the one to always lighten the mood, to make me laugh when I was taking life too seriously. It was one of the things that made me fall for him. But since our baby arrived, we'd both been so wrapped up in our new roles that we'd forgotten how to be the people we fell in love with. The surgery was successful, but the recovery was slow. My husband was bedridden, and I was juggling caring for him and our toddler. Sleep was a distant memory, and I was running on fumes. One evening, as I was trying to soothe our crying baby, I snapped. I yelled at my husband for something trivial, the remote being too far away of all things. It was ridiculous and I knew it, but I couldn't help it. He didn't yell back. Instead, he looked at me with such disappointment that it cut deeper than any words could. That night, after the baby finally fell asleep, we had a heart-to-heart. He confessed that he felt like he was failing as a husband and father because he couldn't be there for us physically. I admitted that I was overwhelmed and scared of handling everything on my own. We were both trying to be strong for each other, but in doing so, we were pushing each other away. It was a sobering realization. We decided then that we needed to be more open about our struggles and work as a team, rather than pretending everything was fine. The next few weeks were tough. I had to help my husband with everything, from getting to the bathroom to managing his medications. Our baby seemed to sense the tension and became fussier than ever. I was exhausted, but I couldn't let it show. I had to be the rock for both of them. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my mom. She'd heard about our situation and wanted to help. I'd been too proud to ask for it, but I was at my breaking point. She came over the next day, and it was like a weight had been lifted. She took over with the baby, cooked meals, and even helped with my husband's care. It gave me a chance to breathe and even catch a nap. With my mom's help, things started to look up. My husband's recovery sped up, and our home life began to settle into a new normal. We started having family dinners again, laughing and talking like we used to. It felt like we were finally getting back on track. One evening, as we were putting the baby to bed, my husband pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry for everything," he whispered. "I love you, and I don't know what I'd do without you." I hugged him back, tighter than I ever had before. "I love you too. We're in this together, remember?" And just like that, the storm passed. We were a team again, stronger for having weathered it. Life threw us a curveball, but we learned to catch it together. Thanks for reading. It means a lot. My wife wants an open marriage and gets pregnant by another man. So I wait for the paternity test and plan, the ultimate paternity reveal party where I serve divorce papers as party favors and announce her affair to all our friends and family. First of all, I apologize for the grammatical errors. English is not my first language. My wife and I have been a couple for 9 years and married for 7 years. We have a son who is currently 6 years old. We both work and take turns doing both household chores and homework with our son. Now, I have the mentality of I am my priority, which my parents taught me since I was a child. If there is something that threatens my own peace, I am simply going to leave it, and that's it, no matter how much it hurts at first. Now, my intimacy life with my wife has always been quite active, although it was reduced a little years ago due to the issue of pregnancy and childbirth. That little by little was resolved, and we ended up having a good intimacy life again. At least that was what I believed. My wife recently told me to talk. She told me that even though she loves me, she feels that ours has become a little monotonous. I told her that I had no problems with that, but she told me that what she meant was that she wants to try new things but with other people. She said that I could do it too, and that it doesn't have to affect our relationship or our family. I'll be honest, her proposal hurt me a lot. She told me to think about it and that she wasn't going to force me. A couple of days passed in which, at my request, she slept with our son while I stayed in our room. I cried as much as I could and thought about what to do. I came to the conclusion that I didn't want the open marriage and that it was going to disturb my peace as much as possible. So I talked to my wife and told her that I wanted a divorce if she wanted an open marriage. I said she could have the child 5 days a week while I can have him on the weekends. She immediately said no, that she doesn't want to end our relationship. She said that we don't need to end it because that would affect her and our son. I responded, "And why should I care? If it affects me, it's the most important thing for me." She didn't take it very well. She accused me of being selfish, manipulative, and a bad father. I told her the truth. I told her that if we divorced, yes, our son would have a hard time, but that he would end up getting used to it like every child. What's the problem then? I told her that I've cried enough and that all I want is a little peace. Her desire to walk around like a drunk teenager having orgies would not give me that peace. Just as she made her intentions clear about wanting an open relationship, I made mine clear about keeping my peace, even if it means separating from them. Am I the idiot for that? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Open marriage would be a no-go for me immediately. No therapy. Just done. Putting a child first can do more harm than good sometimes. I am not looking to break down a bunch of scenarios or debate the pros and cons. To have healthy children, the parents first must be as healthy as they can be, mentally and emotionally. This can be done without abandoning the child. I would recommend therapy for the child. Comment 2. You are the jerk. Not because you don't want an open marriage, but because you are clearly a bad partner. Being with somebody means taking their needs into account. Your me-first approach probably explains why your wife is not satisfied with your performance in bed. You should either divorce her and allow her to find a better partner, or rethink how you approach your life with your wife. Now, for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. So, after I laid it all out for my wife, things went from bad to worse. I thought I was standing my ground, but life had other plans. My wife, she did something I never thought she would. She went behind my back and started seeing someone. Yeah, you heard that right. She didn't even wait for us to figure things out. I found out when I came home early one day, and there she was, with some guy I've never seen before, looking like she got caught with her hand in the cookie jar. I was furious, felt betrayed, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream, to throw him out, but our son was there, and I couldn't make a scene. So I just walked away. I spent the night at a friend's place trying to make sense of it all. I mean, we were supposed to be figuring things out, not jumping into bed with the next available person. The next day, I went back home. I had to face her, for our son's sake. We argued, of course. She said she was sorry, that it didn't mean anything, that she was just confused and looking for something to make her feel alive again. I didn't want to hear any of it. I felt like a fool, like I was the only one trying to hold on to something that was already gone. But then, she dropped another news. She was pregnant, and the timing, it could be mine, or it could be his. I was stunned. I didn't know whether to cry or to shout. It was like a soap opera, and I was the poor sap who didn't see the twist coming. I had a choice to make. I could walk away, like I always said I would if my peace was threatened, or I could stay and try to work through this mess. I thought about my son, about this new baby, and I realized I couldn't just turn my back on them. So, I did something that made me look weak and desperate. I forgave her. I told her we would figure it out, that we would get a paternity test when the time came, and until then, we would try to mend what was broken. It wasn't easy. My friends, they didn't understand. They said I was being a pushover, that I should have more respect for myself. Maybe they were right, but I couldn't just think about myself anymore. We started going to counseling, trying to rebuild trust. It was hard, opening up about everything, facing the shame and the jealousy. But we were making progress, or so I thought. Then, another twist. The guy, he showed up one day, out of the blue. He said he wanted to be involved, that if the baby was his, he wanted to be a part of its life. It was like a punch to the gut. I thought we were past all that, but here he was, and my wife, she didn't turn him away. She said it was only fair to hear him out. I felt like I was losing control of everything. My home, my family, it was all slipping through my fingers. But I couldn't just give up. I had to fight for them, even if it meant dealing with him. So here we are, waiting for the baby to be born, waiting for a paternity test, waiting to see what the future holds. It's a mess, but it's my mess, and I'm sticking it out. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but I'm doing the only thing I can. Thanks for reading. My son gets suspended for defending a bullied kid, and my wife punishes him more. So I hire a lawyer and expose the real bullies, leading to a public apology and my wife leaving. But now we're stronger without her. My son is 14 years old and in the 8th grade. He's a great kid and super well behaved. He gets good grades, does his chores, and is involved in several extracurricular activities at his school. Well, yesterday my wife and I got a call from his school that he was suspended for getting into a fight, and that one of us needed to come get him. So I went to grab him as I was more easily able to leave work for the day, and when I got there, the principal showed me the footage of what had happened. So 3 girls had been throwing food at one of the boys at the table my son and his friends were sitting at during lunch. My son, after a few minutes of this happening, turned around and started yelling at the girls to get them to stop. The girls kept doing it until my son threw an empty milk carton at them and got some milk to splash on them. This made the girls come up to the table and get into a screaming match with my son until one of the girls started slapping my son. He then pushed her somewhat hard and she fell backwards. This made the other girls start hitting him, and after a couple of moments my son started punching the girls. It took about 15 seconds of commotion before the fight was broken up by the vice principal and they were separated. I think the vice principal should have noticed the food throwing and screaming before it even got to that point, but it's neither here nor there. My son had several large scratches on his face, and I was informed he had busted one of the girls' lips. I was told my son would be suspended for the next school week, so I took him to McDonald's and then home. I told him he wasn't in trouble as he was not the one to start the altercation, but he really needs to be mindful of stuff like this as it can show up on his school record. He understood and said he was just so angry as these girls had been picking on the boy sitting with them for all of middle school, and he'd had enough. When my wife got home, I explained the situation to her, and she was livid that my son was in his room playing video games and not being punished. I told her I'm not going to punish my son for sticking up for a child being bullied and for defending himself when attacked. Her response was that he shouldn't lay his hands on girls no matter what, and he should have just run away. She went into his room and yelled at him and went to take his PlayStation away when I stepped in to stop her. I told her she needs to calm down, and we need to talk this through before she makes unilateral punishment decisions. She is insistent that he be punished for the whole week he is suspended, and I disagree. I think the suspension is punishment enough, as when he gets back to school he is going to have a massive amount of schoolwork to catch up on. He has never gotten so much as a detention in his life, and is a good kid. I'm not going to punish him for an incident that was a one-off that he didn't even initiate. She's mad at me for letting him off the hook on this one and said I'm raising him to be a woman beater, which is just flat out ridiculous. I asked her if she'd still want to punish him if there were 3 boys ganging up on him, and she said yes, but not as harshly as he should be for fighting back with the girls. I refuse to let him be punished and have even stated to her that this is why our son trusts me more and comes to me with his problems. Because even though he's well behaved, she wants to jump down his throat for every little mishap he makes. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Self-defense is a human right that does not make one a woman beater. That said, the second guy in a fight is always the one who gets busted, so maybe some reflection on steps your son could have taken to remove himself from the situation and/or de-escalate would be helpful when he encounters assholery like this in the future. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Parents have to support each other and the parenting decisions that the other one makes, even if they disagree with them. I'm wondering how long the girls were suspended for. I asked that tongue-in-cheek. If this is one of those schools that has a zero-tolerance policy for violence, then certainly they should have. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for an update. So, after the whole fight incident, things at home were tense for a while. My wife was still fuming and I was trying to keep the peace. But then, out of nowhere, my son's school called again. This time, they said that the girls involved in the fight had accused my son of starting the whole thing and that he had been bullying them for months. I couldn't believe it. My son? A bully? It was like they were talking about a different kid. We had a meeting with the principal, and it turns out one of the girls' parents was on the school board. They were pushing for my son to be expelled. I was seeing red. We had to hire a lawyer to defend him because the school was taking these accusations seriously, despite the video evidence and witnesses saying otherwise. Meanwhile, my wife was still on her punishment crusade. She said this was proof he needed to learn a lesson. I argued that he was being railroaded, and we needed to stand by him. It was like she didn't even know our son. The whole situation was eating away at me. I felt like I was living in some twisted reality where up was down and right was wrong. The lawyer did his job, and the truth came out. The girls had made up the story because they were embarrassed about starting the fight and getting suspended. My son was cleared, but the damage was done. His reputation took a hit, and he was now the kid who almost got expelled for bullying. Just when I thought we could breathe again, my wife dropped a surprise. She said she couldn't be with someone who didn't share her values and that she was leaving. She packed her bags and went to stay with her sister. I was shocked. Our marriage had its ups and downs, but I never thought she'd walk out over something like this. My son was devastated. He didn't understand why his mom would leave when he needed her most. I didn't have the answers for him. I was just trying to keep it together for his sake. But life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs. A few weeks after my wife left, my son came home from school with a smile on his face. One of the girls involved in the fight had publicly apologized to him in front of their whole class. She admitted they were wrong and that my son was just standing up for their classmate. It was a small victory, but it felt like a weight had been lifted. Now, it's just me and my son trying to navigate this new normal. He's back to his old self, focusing on his grades and extracurriculars. As for my wife, she's reached out a few times, but I've made it clear that her actions have consequences. I'm not ready to let her back into our lives until she can see the error of her ways and apologize to our son. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day. Have a great